I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to The Conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along. Today is Monday, May 22nd, 2022. And as always, I promise today's program is going to be a robust conversation. So happy to have my friend and one of the great lights and leaders in our state and in the country, Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison. He'll be joining me in a minute to talk about several things, among them his new book. That's a huge thing, but also several important legal litigation settlement issues he's been involved in that really say a lot about him, his vision, his work, and our state and our state's commitment to the residents of our state. First, let me, though, invite all of you to support this program by going to the Insight News page on YouTube Insight News MN, and subscribe, like, share. We're trying to grow our subscriber base. We want to get 1,000 subscribers. You can be one of those by going to YouTube Insight News, subscribe, like, and share. You may be connecting with us on any of several platforms, and wherever you are, we thank you. We're streaming live to YouTube Insight News. We're also streaming live to the Facebook page of Black Press USA. They're hosting this StreamYard event. We also stream to Facebook at Black Press USA, to Facebook for Insight News. We stream to Facebook for Al McFarlane. We stream to Twitter, and we stream to LinkedIn. Our goal is to make as many ways as possible to connect with you, to touch you, and to be touched by you. We think it's important that we have conversations with each other, conversations of consequence that are robust and that allow us to tell our truth to ourselves and to the universe. Well, that's what's going to be happening today. First of all, too, let me thank Minnesota Department of Health for their underwriting support of this program. You know, it's been officially declared there's no state emergency on COVID-19, but there still is help for those who want to be safe, stay safe, and vaccination and testing are the critical tools. So bear in mind, still practice protocols to keep you safe in your daily routine, hand washing, just being careful, being mindful, and testing from time to time. Tests are available broadly. And finally, vaccinations are available at no cost to you throughout the state of Minnesota. Thanks to Minnesota Department of Health for their underwriting this message in this program. Let me turn now to my friend and neighbor, Attorney General Keith Ellison. Brother Keith, how you doing, man?
You hear me?
I hear you now.
How you doing? Good to see you.
I'm doing well. Good to see you and hear you.
Always, man. You know, a lot of things cooking around Minneapolis and the whole country.
You've been so busy. I mean, I think we had you on front page of Insight last week with a great story about the settlement that you had with Juul and is it Atria? Let's start talking about that, because that was significant. We reported in Insight News and on the show last week that you delivered $60.5 million in settlement money to the state of Minnesota. That is 2 to 4 times more than any of the other states who've been involved in previous litigations have had. The reason is that they settled, and you decided that you would take the Juul company and tobacco company to court and place their fate in the hands of a Minnesota jury. And by taking that tough stance, they blinked at the last minute and settled. Talk about that, first of all.
Well, let me tell you, vaping is perhaps less dangerous than tobacco cigarettes, but it's not safe. Mm-hmm. It's not safe. It is highly addictive. In fact, it's more addictive than cigarettes sometimes because they've created these salts that allow you to take a deeper draw on the device. So in a cigarette, I've never smoked, so I'm hearing this from people, but when a cigarette, if you try to draw on it, it'll make you cough and gag. Yep. But this thing, if you draw down on it, it's really smooth, which means it's going to get into your lungs deeper, which means it's going to get to your brain deeper, which means it's going to addict you more. And so and again, vaping is a tobacco product. People think, oh, it's not tobacco because we're not burning cigarette leaves or tobacco leaves. No, they're extracting the nicotine and stuff from these tobacco plants, and then kind of like just concentrating it and then providing it for the user. And so it is a tobacco product, and it's highly, highly, highly addictive. It is designed to be that way. And it leads to other addictive conduct, another addictive behavior. So we had to sue. They were trying to attract kids. They had flavors like mango and all this kind of stuff, and they were trying to get kids to do it. They were putting it right next to the Marlboro cigarettes, and a lot of times kids were not, starting to vape and then stick it with vaping. Sometimes they graduate on to tobacco cigarettes, and so we thought this was a major health risk. To the credit of Hubert H. Humphrey, he sued Big Tobacco 25 years ago and got smoking rates way down, way down. And then in comes Juul, and they go right back up again. So we thought we had to sue. So we did sue. And, we got some folks to work with. We worked with Robbins Kaplan Law Firm. We worked with Zimmerman Reed Law Firm. And we got our own people at the AG's office. And together we sued these guys. They fought. We thought their case was not good. We thought we had a stronger case, but we didn't know. But we held out. We told them we're going to try this case. We're not going for the get out of my face money. You know what get out of my face money is? Not enough, right?
How much did they offer, or can you say?
Well, those things are in negotiation, but and I'm not allowed to say. But put it like this: if they had not dealt with us and given us the number we were looking for, the jury would have hit them harder, I believe. Now, so you might think, well, why didn't you just get the jury verdict? Here's why. Because if we get that big verdict, then we're going to have to fight them over it in bankruptcy, perhaps, or in appeal. Now they agreed to pay the money, pay it now. Now, here's another fun fact, Al, and you'll like this one. This $60.5 million accounts for all the money that they made in Minnesota. So we basically have made it. We've zeroed them out.
Got our money back.
We've got our money back. We have extracted all of the money that they took advantage of in Minnesota. So that's what happened, And
let me take it another place, Keith. And you may have heard me say this from time to time. It's kind of an Al McFarlane-ism. Too often I complain that our people, meaning Black people, we get the misery, they get the money. What do you mean, Al McFarlane? And a lot of the solution work, there are solution makers, and the province of solution making is kind of held close to the chest by traditional power players.
Right.
And I'm speaking kindly here. Let me be plain. From my point of view, as a Black man and as a journalist and as an observer, a writer, the trail to me looks like, as often as not, big institutions, big organizations, governments appropriate, organize, and do the right thing in trying to solve some of the problems of society. But the people and institutions they use tend to be their own, tend to be exclusionary.
Right.
And exclude Black people. My point is, how do we ensure that of the $60 million, our people are involved in the solution side of that equation, at least commensurate with the impact, the damage, if we can determine how much damage we experienced as a community? What do you think?
Let me just tell you, first of all.
And I think we failed with the big tobacco settlement. I'll put that out there.
No, I think you're right. I will tell you that that look, getting proper allocations is like the next part of the fight, right? But we're on the ground floor of it. President Bobby Champion led the bill in the state legislature to allocate a specific fund for the vaping money. So there was no fund for the tobacco money. The tobacco money went basically to the general fund. And this fund, then now there's a fund for the vape money. And, we've already been in conversation to make sure that this goes to ameliorate, fix smoking and vaping in the Black community, because, we do have institutions that help people stop smoking, and we sure got our fair share of people who smoking and vaping. And so, this is a critical issue. How do we do it? Get involved in the conversation right now. I'd say contact my office department. I mean, at the Attorney General's office, but also the Department of Health. And then also when the settlement fund gets set up, there will be people who sit on that.
Mm-hmm.
And, we need to make sure that is an equitable composition and reflects, who the vapors have affected, which includes Black people.
Well, so here's a good question from one of our viewers. David Youngblood is writing, asking Attorney General Ellison, can you correlate the ongoing fight in northern Minnesota regarding the iron ore mine with racial justice? That's a good question. That's different. What do you think? Thank you, David, for the question.
Well, I like the way David is thinking, right? Because so often we would not correlate those things.
Right.
We wouldn't put those things together. But I mean, look, the state of Minnesota, to its credit, does respond when people around the state have problems. When farmers in southern Minnesota have drought, the state will respond. When farmers in southern Minnesota have too much flooding, or in western Minnesota have flooding, we'll respond. When the Iron Range is facing economic challenges, we'll respond. I mean, in just a few days, there's this big controversy as to whether or not which iron mining company will be allowed to exploit the mineral deposits in northern Minnesota, and that's what he's talking about. But then, but aren't we Minnesotans? Aren't African Americans Minnesotans? I mean, if other Minnesotans are having a recession, we're having a depression, or if they're having a depression, we're having a double depression. If they have a cold, we got the flu.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, this is very true. But the only answer I can give to David is this: you just got to keep on fighting, man. You just got to keep on arguing. I mean, one thing that's right in front of all of us is we just passed a marijuana bill. Now, I'm just going to tell your viewers, Brother Keith, don't smoke marijuana. I'm not judging anybody who does. I'm just saying, I don't know anybody whose life's it's just not something I do. Okay, put it like that. But what about the dispensaries? Will they be in the hands of people who were the target of the investigations and the criminal prosecutions?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look, there's a lot of folks like friends of ours who are very concerned that we're just going to go from big tobacco to big weed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What's to stop another monopoly from just coming in the door? A big weed, big alcohol, big tobacco, big oil, and it all just rolls over the people who have never really been given a fair chance or been equitably included. So I think that this, David, if I were you, yes, ask these questions, but why don't you start figuring out what's going on with the marijuana dispensaries and who is going to profit from that market? Because Lord knows there will be one. Some people will make a lot of money off of it. Will the people who have borne the brunt of the war on drugs benefit? So
is that possible? Let's sit in it for a second, Attorney General Ellison.
Yeah.
How do you see equity revealing itself? How do you see access and fairness and opportunity revealing themselves in a situation that's before us? It's not done already.
Yeah.
It's shaping as we speak. So ground floor, elevator, right about to happen. How do you see us making sure that we're part of the decision making and the beneficiary of the apparatus itself?
Well, right here, right now, there should be African-American entrepreneurs and community in general just sitting down saying, what's in this bill?
Mm-hmm.
And I have not conferred with my dear friend, Bobby Champion, but I bet you he'd be more than happy to accept an invitation to sit down and lay out what's in there. Then the next question will be, well, how can we somehow be a part of this for those who want to be?
Mm-hmm.
And then that's a fair question. And then another question does involve me directly, because part of the bill is allocated to expunging records of people who have convictions that are marijuana related. And my office will be doing that. I have to hire lawyers who will do it. You know, any lawyers who want to do expungements, call me.
Okay.
We'll be hiring people to do this. And this is to try to polish up people's records who have been tarnished because what was the crime, a few months ago is not one now, or won't be after the date of enactment. So this is the way that we get in on the ground floor, and it is important, I think. And I want to say commend David for raising this question, but at some point we've got to say, okay, we've raised the question around equity. How are we going to get some equity? And that means organization, sitting down. It means business plans. It means finding investors, and it means raising issues with public servants to make sure that they write laws that are equitable and fair. And that is what must be done, not last week, but right now when it comes to the marijuana legalization.
I'm Al McFarlane. You're listening to The Conversation with Al McFarlane. My guest today is Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison. Among other things, he's got a new book called Break the Wheel of Violence, I think it is, right?
No, it's called Break the Wheel, Ending the Cycle of Police Violence.
I'm looking at it now. Break the Wheel, Ending the Cycle of Police Violence. We'll talk about that in a second. Before I ask you to respond, let me look at what I had listed as a hot topic today, and that is the fact that the District of Minnesota of the U.S. Attorney's Office recently, I think early May, arrested 45 Minneapolis gang members and associates and indicted them with federal charges. And this is a release that came from the U.S. Attorney's District of Minnesota office. It said the newly unsealed indictments include RICO, conspiracy, murder, and drug trafficking offenses. On that day, 2 indictments were unsealed in district court, charging 30 members and associates of 2 Minneapolis-based street gangs, the Highs and the Bloods, with racketeering, conspiracy involving alleged murder, attempted murder, robbery, obstruction of justice, and drug trafficking. You can go to our website or just call the article up. But let's talk about that. That's a major announcement. The arrest of 45 gang members. What's the potential impact on our community, on safety, on crime rates? What strategies are you working with and other jurisdictions to help reduce violence, gang-related violence, and also to help support young people and families in our community that are victimized by or attracted to the gangster lifestyle? What do you think?
Right. Well, first of all, let me say that those 45 individuals are presumed innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah.
And but the allegations against them are very serious, and if true, and they have got to be proved in a court first, but if true, these 45 individuals are contributing to mayhem, violence, suffering in our community. They're making our community a worse place, and they've got to be held accountable for that. I'm sorry, but they just do, and if these guys are guilty of what they've been alleged to be, then I hope that there are fewer funerals this summer. I hope that Reverend McAfee and Reverend Howell and Reverend Bowen and Reverend Ref don't have to pronounce last rites over somebody's child because this summer, right? I mean, when you think about a reduction in the murder rate, think of it in terms of bodies not buried, right? Very important, right? Now, at the same time, we don't want to abandon our commitment to, the rights of the defendant, equal justice under the law. We're not trying to railroad anybody, but these guys were lawfully indicted. They will have a trial, or they'll be given an opportunity to plead guilty if they are guilty. And so I think that I look at this as a situation where we can have a shot at a safer community this summer. Let me also say this, I do think the U.S. Attorney has done a good job. Want to commend Andy Lugar for the work he's done. But I'll say that there's a lot going on. Just last week, we actually we convened a meeting at Sanctuary Church. Hats off to Reverend Edris Williams, who hosted us. Excellent representative of the Black clergy, and he's at Sanctuary. And so last September, there were 3 shootings in the parking lot of Winners gas station and Merwin's Liquor.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we did is filed a nuisance action. Now, under the law, when you file a nuisance action, you can shut down a business, but you've got to prove to a judge it's an ongoing nuisance. So we filed our case with the expectation that within 30 days, there'd be more mayhem on those corners. There wasn't any more. There wasn't. Because I would have been glad to sue them and shut them down if need be. But there wasn't any new cases. Now,
which means why wasn't there?
Good question. I think good question. Here's a few answers. One is that Operation Endeavor was operating, and I want to give Cedric Alexander a lot of credit. He's your Commissioner of Public Safety, good man, friend of mine, friend of your whole community, our whole community. I want to give credit to, the city council member, Jeremiah Ellison, who was very helpful in our action. I want to give credit to the mayor. I want to give credit to the non-elected officials, non-appointed officials, who really deserve the most credit. I mean, the first words out of my mouth should have been McAfee, Howell, Bowen, should have been Lisa Clemens, should have been Trey Pollard, should have been, folks who, those are the first names I should have mentioned. These are people are not elected to anything. They are citizens who care about safety.
Yeah.
And they are outraged at the lack of safety. So they put their bodies on the line. They got their T-shirts on and all of that, got out there and just stood in the way. And they, drew attention to an appalling situation. And they made a very important statement, which is that African Americans in North Minneapolis have a right to be safe too.
Yeah.
North Minneapolis is not a red light district. Al, you know what a red light district is?
I do.
Yeah, a red light district is where the city fathers and mothers just say, whatever you want to do over there.
That's where you do it. They set it up and make it happen.
That's where you do it.
Yeah.
You want to go over there and buy drugs or sex or sell drugs or sex, whatever you want to do, do it over there. Keep it away from the nice people. Well, we have had, I think, a de facto red light district for a while. And there shouldn't be, and there cannot be. People deserve to be safe. So starting with the on-the-ground activists, the members of New Salem Baptist Church, Shiloh Church, all the other congregations, Reverend Bowen, if I'm leaving somebody out, please don't be mad at me. True Believers Church right there on Broadway deserves a lot of credit, who just got out there and put their bodies in the way. Then what happened is that you had Project Endeavor. Then, the Attorney General's office, we stepped in, used the tools we had, and we didn't just go in alone. We got Mike Freeman and the city attorney in Minneapolis and Jacob Fry. So all 3 of us filed a nuisance action together, and it has been maintained. And then another thing is I'll give the owners of the properties a little credit.
Yep. When
it comes to the gas station, you started seeing a police car outside of that station every day.
Meaning they were hiring the service.
Yeah, they hired somebody to be there on site. And that brought down a lot of the negativity. And as you know, the nickname of that gas station is the murder station. And we don't want it to have that name anymore. We want to put that name in the past. We want to bury that name. And then at Merwin's, they brought in Trey Pollard and his team, and they just basically switched out management. And so Trey Pollard and his team, they're pretty good at understanding the neighborhood that they're in. And so things kind of dried up real quick right there. So between the neighborhood activists, units of government, Project Endeavor, and then some action by the businesses themselves, we didn't get any new incidents. Now, before we give ourselves a big hand, some folks are telling me that some of the stuff has moved down the block. And so we've got to go think about how we stamp it out altogether, not just displace it. And so but that is something that has happened. And
What are you hearing? Moving which way? North or south or where?
moving, I would say moving west.
Moving west. Okay.
I would say from that corner moving west.
Really?
Sort of like
Broadway?
behind the McDonald's.
Okay.
Right? As a lot of people are getting concerned because of bad conduct over there. And so that
behind the across from the fish store. What's the fish store called?
Right. J&J or whatever.
Yeah.
So like over there, so like not that those businesses are they're not these businesses are not suspected.
Right.
But I'm just saying as an identifier.
Right.
But at that meeting, I tell you, it was a good meeting because a lot of people said what they felt and what they thought, and I could see Commissioner Alexander listening carefully. Mayor O'Hara was there, listening carefully. The county attorney was there.
Chief O'Hara.
Thank you. My mistake.
Yeah.
Chief O'Hara was there, listening carefully, and neighbors were listening carefully. And Reverend McAfee was there. Trey Parlett was there. Women from, the Mother's Love were there. There were folks there. And then one lady stood up and said, we should start another emergency nursery because of some of these, we need to be, and so, I mean, I just offer that as an example because spontaneously people were thinking of things they could do.
Solutions.
Right? Yeah. And so it was a good meeting. One young man raised due process concerns about the 45 indictments. And what I said to them is that it is legitimate for you to make sure that everybody has their due process rights.
Right.
We're not going to repeat the 1990s where we say, you're a gang member, you have no rights. No, right. They got rights.
Right.
They also, can't do what they're alleged to be doing, right?
Right.
At the same time, right?
Let me shift the focus a little bit. You caused a little bit of consternation, I think, when you took over a case at Hennepin County that involved the adjudication or charging of a 15-year-old, I believe, in a murder case. Talk about that. And here's what I understood and what we've reported, that 3 people charged with the murder, 2 young people that were actually the gun persons. One had the gun, but them directed by a 23-year-old or so who had been the significant other of the woman that was killed, and the father of that child. He drives these young kids to the house. He actually purchases a gun, gets them prepped, and then they go in and they end up shooting this woman 5 times, I believe. Right. So and the county attorney was trying to do a plea deal. It seemed to say, how can restorative justice work here where we don't have these teenagers or young kids locked up for life and thrown away? That I'll leave it there. Talk about what happens there.
Yeah. Well, under Miller versus Alabama, a juvenile convicted of murder cannot get life without the possibility of parole unless the government proves that that child is incorrigible and absolutely impossible to redeem. So the likelihood there's no scenario under which those kids are going to be locked away forever. Okay. Now, but the facts are basically as you lay them out. A 22-year-old breaks off with his ex, with whom he has a child, recruits 2 kids, and those teenagers follow the woman around, literally stalk her for about a week, then home invade her, break into her home, forcibly break into her home, and then shoot 9 times, hitting her 5, killing her, and her child's in the house. So that is the facts as we are aware. And I concluded, and the family concluded, and many people in the community concluded, and the governor concluded that a juvenile disposition was not appropriate for the shooter in this case. And the governor, under Minnesota law, has the authority to have the Attorney General prosecute any case he chooses. and he chose to invoke that authority in this matter. I make no critiques of the county attorney. I'm not here to put her down or anything. I'll just say we had a very different idea about how to move forward. And my idea was that that particular matter was too heinous to simply receive a juvenile disposition, which would have been somewhere, as high as 24 months, but often less than that. And so that is kind of how it came down. I share the belief that our system that sanctions Black kids, boys in particular, harder than it does others, and that's not fair. I do believe in restorative justice. I believe in redemption, but I think that what the real problem in our juvenile justice system is the average Black kid is not getting a break. I mean, the Black community, as I understand us, and in all communities, is they're not saying, oh, let the first degree murderer, stalker, home invader out. I think we're comfortable saying that person might need to be away from the rest of us long enough so that we can be safe again.
We need to be safe.
Right,
yeah,
right.
Period.
But I also think that when African Americans are talking about, racism in the criminal justice system, what outrages me and many people I know is like, well, wait a minute. How are you going to let this car thief, he's getting all this time, he's not getting any services, he's not getting anything, and the white kid's just walking away? So this is the real problem. It's not the outlier. This case involves an extraordinarily heinous conduct. That's not. We're not upset that person is getting sanctioned by the law. We are upset when, our ordinary normal kids doing stupid kid stuff are now being treated like with the harshest of penalties. They don't get drug treatment. They don't get services. They just get thrown away. And so that is the crux of the discussion. To say that if somebody commits a home invasion, first degree premeditated murder, if you just put that person right back into the community, then you're re-traumatizing the community and the family.
Yeah.
Because when that kid comes out in 2025, which is no time,
yep,
he'll be in the same Target line as you. He'll be in the same Cub Foods line as you. And you're knowing what he did. And then he turns around, you know what I did, and I'll do it again. And this is the attitude. So the bottom line is we're not 100%, we're not 180 degrees apart. But I believe that the most heinous offense cannot receive minimal consequences, or you're just going to get more heinous offenses.
Is anybody misreading the will of the Black community? I think that what you are saying reflects accurately common sense sentiment among men and women, because you started off talking about the need for an individual, a family, a community to be safe, number one, and to be not in a state of ongoing trauma at the threat of being killed or being home invaded or any other number of things that too often are associated with our community.
Sure.
And with lawlessness, in a way that they become the definition of our community, and that becomes the definition of who we are, all of which is erroneous, right?
Right.
And so what do you sense, and how do we begin to articulate the balance, our requirement and our commitment to justice, number one, for our community and every other citizen, justice, and our commitment for professionalism and people that we hire to manage the processes that should be ensuring justice is the rule of the law of the land. What do you think?
Well, I just think that as a policymaker, leader in the area who's responsible for delivering justice, providing it, you've got to be in very close communication with the community. You've got to hear everything they are saying to you. Because yes, they might be saying that we're overrepresented in the criminal justice system, juveniles and adults, but they're at the same time saying that we don't have victim services.
Right.
That, you don't think of Black people as being a crime victim at all.
Mm-mm.
There was a time when you could not rape a Black woman in America. That was between 1619 and 1865. It was perfectly legal to sexually exploit a Black woman or man or child.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there's this legacy of Black victimhood being a non-existent thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to help people get some understanding that while we don't want to be overrepresented in the criminal justice system, we also, as a defendant, we also don't want to be neglected as a victim.
Right.
Right. It's not right. And these funerals are going to be conducted in our neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
And it is our pastors and imams that are going to be doing these funerals. And so before you just say, oh, I'm going to save everybody by not holding anyone accountable for even the worst conduct, check in, right? Because, it's slightly more complicated than you might think it is, but it's not particularly complicated. Because, hey, look, I'm not speaking specifically about this matter, but I will say in general, every African-American person knows that if you harm a white lady, that's a good way to get in prison for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
We all know that. Everybody knows that. Statistically, it's a fact that if you want to, who gets the worst sentences when the victims are white? Mm-hmm. Who gets the lowest sentences when the victims are Black? Regardless of the race of the defendant, it's just not quite as bad when we are the crime victim. So I will just say that I'm going to keep on trying to get guns off the street, holding gun retailers accountable. I'm going to keep after Kia and Hyundai. If you run a business and you're allowing drug dealing and bad conduct to go on, you're going to hear from me, and we're going to prosecute where we're asked to. And the law is equal. So if you are an individual private citizen committing crimes, and I'm asked to hold you accountable, I will. And if you're an individual, and if you're an official, a police officer committing crimes, we're going to hold you accountable there too. So equal justice under the law. And you know what? And if we do this long enough and we get credible, mm-hmm. How do you get credible? Well, you do the right thing for a long time. Then you get credible.
Keep doing
it. Right.
Yeah.
Well, if we do that, businesses will locate on Broadway. Mm-hmm. Restaurants will have outdoor seating on Broadway. Mm-hmm. People won't be afraid to do it. We'll have people, the fact is, the fear of violence and crime chases away economic opportunity.
Yeah.
And so we've got to create an environment where the community is viewed to be safe. And I'm committed to it.
Let's talk about your book, Keith Ellison. The book Break the Wheel, Ending the Cycle of Police Violence. Talk about that. What's the genesis of the idea? What are the principles you're sharing? And what are the takeaways you want your readers in our community to gain from Break the Wheel, Ending the Cycle of Police Violence?
Well, Al, as you know, we've been working on trying to build.
This is your second book or third book?
Second
book, okay.
Second, but I got another one I'm working on, but this is the second one. But as you know, I've been working on police community relations for a long time. Mm-hmm. Like not new. I remember I went to you when I was working on the Tysell Nelson case in the early 90s. And you know all about that. I'm sure you've got many articles on all of this stuff. Mm-hmm. But I decided to write a book because as I started trying to lead the prosecution involving the people who killed George Floyd, I needed to figure out what, based on my own experience, what to do and what not to do. And then I wanted to look at other people's experience to figure out what to do and what not to do. So I remember reading everything I could about the prosecution of Rodney King. And I didn't find a whole lot, to tell you the truth. Mm-hmm. I found some things, and it became very clear that based on the experience of Rodney King case, we had to defeat the change of venue. We had to throw everything we had into stopping the change of venue. Mm. So that was a very important decision, right? And it's something that we learned. Then also I read this book called Freddie's Last Ride, and it's about the death and killing of Freddie Gray in Baltimore. And that book showed that the mistake that could have been made is that the specific cause of his life-ending injuries was not made tight enough, right? So there's pictures that show that he might have been severely injured when he got into the police vehicle, right?
Not as a result of falling around in the vehicle, but before.
Yeah, and I'm sure that the ride that they gave him didn't help anything.
Right.
But one thing's for sure, you've got to have a very tight prosecutorial chain. This led to this, led to this, led to this, led to this. Bam, therefore there's causation. So we had to do that, and I didn't want to make any mistakes. So the reason I wrote this book is because some other prosecutor some other time is going to have a case like this one, and I want them, they don't have to do what I did. In fact, they might use my book to not do what I did.
Right.
But I want there to be a document in place so that you can understand how to put together a successful prosecution of a police officer. As you know, and every prosecutor knows, and every defense lawyer knows, that nearly every juror, nearly all jurors, are going to resolve doubts in favor of the police.
Mm-hmm.
And because there's this sort of presumption that the people who protect and serve are honest and are doing the right thing, how does a juror deal with when confronted with when they maybe didn't do the right thing?
Right.
So we needed to be able to scope that out and help people understand that it is against everything we have been taught and led to believe to find an officer guilty of anything. Right. Also, I think it was important to understand that when you are prosecuting a case like this one, that everything is flipped. So, the judges they're not going to be on your side. And I'm not saying the Judge Cahill called a bad case. I think he called a good case. Mm-hmm. But he did not cut us any breaks. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Nor was he supposed to. Right. But I mean, normally prosecutors and judges, and they kind of, I mean, I don't know.
They're kindred. I mean, they both think they're doing the Lord's work.
Right.
Yeah.
But in this one, they're holding you to your paces, every single pace, right? And for example, I mean, how do you deal with the press when as a prosecutor, you're really not allowed to say a bunch of stuff,
mm-hmm.
But you should you, how do you handle them? Do you monitor them? What do you do with what you learn? And then how do you deal with the legislators? Because at the end of the day, you can gain that conviction and still not really solve the problem. And so we've obtained the conviction of Chauvin, Lane, Tao, and King, and we still don't have the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act passed. Mm-hmm. Now, we do have some things that we did pass. We were able to get a law in there banning no-knock warrants. We were able to pass some things on chokeholds. Mm-hmm. There's some other good things that have happened. There's real reform going on at the post board. But, the highest level federal officials in our country still haven't gotten around to seeing that this problem needs to be solved. And let me just say, Al, and you know this, you look at the amount of money Minneapolis has paid out in the last 10 years for police misconduct, I bet you we're talking $100 million.
Mm-hmm.
What about New York? What about Chicago? What about LA? What is the business case for allowing police misconduct to just fester and grow?
Yeah.
It's wasteful.
Well, it's willy-nilly. It's wasting taxpayers' money.
Yeah.
And the people that benefit from that waste, not the taxpayers.
Not the taxpayer.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we're if you're driving around Minneapolis right now, you're having a bumpy ride, aren't you?
Yeah.
I mean, there's potholes everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, that money, we could have used it to fill them. I mean, but also schools, also, so many services that $100 million would support. But it's not just a Minneapolis problem. It is a national problem. And so, this tragic situation involving Tyree Nichols, how do you deal with the tape? I'm talking about the videotape. Mm-hmm. How long do you hang on to it? How do you deal with public relations? How do you talk to the community so that people will give you enough space to competently prosecute that case? Because if they think you're not going to do it, they're taking to the streets big time. You know, and so there's a lot of things that I learned in that case, and a lot of things that I share. I will tell you that it is important to document history so that you can avoid repeating the bad sides of it, and to repeat the good sides of it. It struck me that this may have been the largest mass protest. The murder of George Floyd may have provoked the largest mass protest in American history.
Maybe in the world. I don't know.
Maybe in the world.
Yeah.
Well, you and I were out there in the streets when Rodney King was beaten like that, and we're all the way over here in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And so this one was even bigger than that.
Yeah.
You know, so it's important to record what happened, to share my own experiences, and hopefully folks will be able to use that. Policymakers, just ordinary citizens, whoever. People should get a copy. I think it's a good read, and I think it has a lot of important lessons.
Keith, thank you so much. One last question. I'm going to be joined in a minute by Coach Leah, who's doing our regular sports beat. I don't know if you know her at all or not. If you don't, I'm going to introduce you to her in a couple of seconds. She's backstage. You know Coach Leah? Do you know her?
Well, if I know her, I don't know her well enough. So
okay.
I'd love to meet her again.
Before I bring her on, I had one last question for you. And it sort of, considering the stuff we've talked about in this episode, what are some of the potential solutions or initiatives that you believe can be implemented state, local, federal levels to address police violence, vaping, gang activity? How do we bring stakeholders to collaborate in creating meaningful change? I say, how do we create a sense of equity and ownership in the solution side of the equation in our community? What do you think?
Well, you know what? We just need a well-informed, active population. We need people who stand up and demand better at every turn saying that politics doesn't matter means that the people who stay involved are the ones who are going to determine what's going to happen to you. And so I would say that the way to deal with this issue of police violence or corporate irresponsibility, which is what Juul is doing, is the way to deal with it all is to be involved, stay involved, never stop being involved, and also stay informed by listening to Conversations with Al McFarlane.
There we go. I love that. Thank you. Let me introduce you real quickly to Coach Leah Jean Denley. She's a proud product of North Minneapolis. Coach, let me introduce you to Minnesota's Attorney General Keith Ellison. Leah, how you doing? Bring Leah on. How are you?
Hi, Leah.
Hey, I am doing great. And you probably don't remember me by this name, but if you maybe recall Leah Frazier back in the day.
Okay, yeah. Well, so you met a special person. There you go. Is that right?
I said it one more time. I'm sorry.
So you must have met somebody special and you changed your name.
Yes, absolutely. And indeed, yes.
That's how those things happen sometimes.
Yes, indeed. So I try to kind of hold on to a little bit of, the Frazier thing with the name of my foundation, the Frazier Foundation. And we're trying to still do a lot of really great work in the Twin Cities. And so, but just really, really quickly, as I was listening, I'm just getting fond memories because I recall you were an athlete in high school, sir.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
High school sports can teach you a lot. It teach you how to get to the practice on time, teach you how to try. You know what, Coach? I think kids need to learn how to try, because it's like, well, if I'm not great at it, I don't want to do it. No, wait a minute. What about working at it? What about really putting your energy into it? You might have some things, some talents you don't even know you have, right? And then, like, look, most people are not going to be professional athletes, nor should they, but youth sports will teach you how to be a good teammate, teach you how to win with dignity, lose with dignity. You don't win every game. What are you going to do? Throw stuff and be mad and cuss everyone out? No, you're going to shake hands, get on the bus, and figure out how do you win the next game. So hats off to our coaches, and bless you. And thank you, Coach Leah.
Absolutely.
Keith, thank you so much. And we'll talk to you later on. Okay. Appreciate you.
All right now. See y'all later.
All right. Bye-bye. Coach Leah, how you doing, my friend?
Really well, really well. Happy Monday, everybody. You know, I'm always so excited to join you on our Monday chats, Al. So thank you so much for having me always.
Absolutely. Well, take it away. What's on your mind?
So I want to start with a trending topic, and BG is back. This is her little moniker here, BG, Brittany Griner. And the WNBA had an amazing love fest this past weekend, welcoming Brittany back after a 585-day absence from the WNBA court, believe it or not. And of course, the unlawful detainment of her in Russia. And so, again, this past weekend, they first visited for their first regular season game, the Los Angeles Sparks. They were in Los Angeles and played against the Sparks. And Vice President Kamala Harris was actually there and addressed both teams. It's really an interesting sight to see. Kamala was thanked by the head of the WNBA Players Association, Agumake, who plays for the Sparks. And so she was thanking the Biden administration so much for bringing their girl, Brittany, back. And so that was really, really nice to see that. And then, of course, Kamala also visited the Phoenix's locker room as well prior to tip off. And so it was just so much going on. And so the commentators were constantly asking everyone or telling the viewers, it's going to be amazing to see how Brittany is able to focus on just playing, or any of the players for that matter, because of all the pomp and circumstance that was surrounding the game. So, but it was really, really good to see. And then their first home game. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have a question?
How did the game come out?
Yeah, so they lost the game against the Sparks, and they also lost the game against the Sky at home. But Brittany Griner put on an absolute show. She added a very strong three-point shot, which is, we know, especially for players in the States, not so common, you know, for our post players to be able to shoot that three-point shot. And so, you know, Al, I'm having a good time kind of also getting you more acclimated to sports and terminology, and you're going to be a pro before, you know, this year is over with.
I'm looking forward to it. I confess that I've never been. Let me tell you my sports story. When I was a reporter at the Pioneer Press, I think I started there in it might have been 69 or 68. I can't remember. It was a long time ago. And I had a second job working for the Human Rights Department over in downtown St. Paul. It was a daytime job, nighttime at the Pioneer Press. And I was on the sports desk. My daytime job had me take a picture on public accommodations. I went down to the towers across from the post office in downtown Minneapolis, and I saw a brother walking across the pool. And the picture was, take a picture of somebody Black in a lush environment downtown showing equal accommodations, right? So, hey, bruh, would you come sit in this picture? He said, sure. He sat down, took the picture. Thank you. What's your name? My name is Rod Carew. Rod, thanks, man. What do you do for a living? Is what I asked him, right? He said, I play baseball. I said, baseball? Who do you play for? Now, the problem, Leah, Coach Leah, is that in my own narrow growing up world in Kansas City, I would never, ever imagine coming in contact with a superstar, a megastar like Rod Carew. So in my ignorance, I was just being me saying, hey, brother, who you play for? You know, he was a Triple Crown winner that year. So, but he was gracious. He was gracious. So that's so you're being here with me is going to elevate my consciousness about sports. And I'm grateful to you.
Oh, well, thank you for that. And I will tell you, that's typically the reason why After the Whistle as a curated product exists, because you'll find many more stories like that than you would really, than you would think. So, but so that was really cool about that. But I'm going to pivot really, really quick, make a quick pivot to the NBA. Yep. So I'd like to ask you, did you know that the Miami Heat and the Denver Nuggets are each one win away from the NBA Finals, so competing against each other in the finals? Now, why is that? because the Boston Celtics and the Los Angeles Lakers are now 0-3 in the playoffs. Now, why is that a big deal? Because in the playoffs, there is a 0-149 record all time for teams that have trailed 0-3 to win the playoffs. So, you know, I want to say, we don't want to say that nothing is impossible, but it's probably very improbable that either one of those teams will make it to the final at this point. So got a fun story, just real quick fun story about both the Celtics and the Lakers. So point of personal privilege, I am a huge Kevin Garnett fan. Kevin Garnett was a very big supporter of our Diamond program from the very beginning. And I got to know him and his family when he was just getting out of high school and joining the Timberwolves, right? So when he went to go play for Boston, that was the only time that I was a Boston Celtics fan, and was really, really happy to see that they won, that Kevin Garnett was able to get a championship, even though it wasn't with our Minnesota Timberwolves. So that's my funny Boston story. My really fun Laker story is this. So many people know that, well, I don't know. Did you know that Minneapolis Lakers, the Lakers were from Minneapolis, and then now that franchise went to Los Angeles. And so then the question is, well, there are no lakes in LA, right? Well, there are. I found out there's a little bit of investigative digging. So you got to go 30 miles outside of Hollywood to get to a lake. So that's okay. But we don't have a long time to get into a lot of history. But what I would love to do is talk about some history behind that. And we want to definitely bring Mahmoud El-Kati, our resident sage, into that conversation, because he is so knowledgeable when it comes to athletics, believe it or not, as well as African Americans in athletics.
See, I didn't know that. I talk to Mahmoud all the time. We never, ever have talked sports, and you tell me a whole new thing. Listen, we're out of time today. This has been wonderful. Let's plan to keep this conversation going. Thank you so much, Coach Leah.
Absolutely. Just real quick.
Go ahead.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel. You've got to go to it. We'll have a QR code available coming up here in the near future. We're 650 away from our 1,000-person goal. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Thank you, Coach Leah. I'm Al McFarlane. This is Coach Leah Jean Denley. We're both here with you and glad to be with you. Join us again next time. Take care.